Okay, let's see if this is working. Where's the... Oh, there we go. All right, 1 second. See if anyone is here yet. Oh, hey, you guys are here. Sorry. Yeah, I just want to make sure, people actually say something in the chat before I get too carried away. Let me know if you can hear me, please, because last time I had a lot of audio problems that were driving me crazy. It was really frustrating, but I switched over to a different streaming program this time, so I'm really hoping that fixes it. And yeah, so today I didn't really have much of a set plan. I just figured, it's a Friday. Happy Friday to you all, by the way, and felt like maybe doing a quick live stream, having a drink. Thanks, Rob. Hey, Francisco. Yeah, so I just felt like I'd have a quick drink, relax on a Friday, talk to you guys about investing and space. Invite you all to, have a drink with me and talk about whatever you want. I do have a few things I can share. Sorry, I wasn't even going to go to the Intelsat contract yet, but yeah, so the background is blurred. Maybe that's what you're finding is odd with the camera, Johnny. I can try unblurring it if you guys prefer, but my background is not always the cleanest, so double-edged sword for sure. Anyway, anyone else in the chat want to let me know if you guys do all prefer having a non-blurred background? I'll try to change that. Yeah, so this is Rocket Lab's stock chart. If you guys followed any of my previous few videos, I did really want to buy some shares around here. It was at 417 at the time. And then the day of, I was like, well, maybe tomorrow it'll go up lower and I can get it closer to 3. So I didn't pull the trigger. Then we had this big run up, as I mentioned in a previous video. Yeah, I was going to talk about that as well, Johnny. Blurred background. Maybe it's the filter. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the blurriness then. Yeah, the wall art is not bad. I think I'm going to have to try and figure out that blurriness maybe for next time. On my end, it all at least looks clear, so I don't know what the cause is of that. Anyway, all this is to say that I did buy some shares today. If we look at a shorter term chart, obviously it's been falling back down. I was kicking myself for not buying here. So looking at like a 5-day, I bought today, I paid about $4.29, I believe, maybe $4.30, as we fell about 2%. It looks like 3% actually. Thanks. Yeah, those are from Displate, by the way. I always love those. They're metal and they don't fade or anything like that. So yeah, I guess I bought around somewhere in here. I think right here. It looks like I could have got a little bit of a better price, maybe $4.25. But, what are you going to do? Whatever. These are the trades. I always like to show them. So I actually had to sell Apple because I don't have a ton of cash available. And, if I'm buying a stock these days, I have to sell something else. I'm kind of saving money for other things. So Apple was the one that I ended up deciding on selling. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts on that. I kind of feel like the innovation is ending a little bit at Apple. You know, they bring out a new phone every year. There was a lot of rumors around an Apple car. Nothing seemed to come of it. And I think they kind of, if they were still going to do that, I think they kind of missed the boat on that. I don't know. I mean, still a solid company. Obviously, they have a ton of cash and, you know, not a super risky investment, but just not as big on them as I used to be. And when I bought them a while back, I just felt like I would hold them forever. But yeah, sold some shares of Apple, bought some shares of Rocket Lab today. I don't know why it got divided up into all these weird little segments, but that always happens in the background. Nice, Ian. Yeah, Francisco, I am still thinking of adding some more. I did get about 400 shares today, so not a huge amount relative to my overall position, but I am happy that it brings my average cost down as opposed to up. For some reason, psychologically, I just really prefer that, although if, you know, Rocket Lab's 20 plus in a few years, who's really going to care? Yeah, exactly, Johnny. That was kind of my thinking on that with Apple too. It's kind of just like it's turned into a safer company and not really an innovator, I feel anyway. So I also had a put expiring today, which is an option. And if you're not as familiar with options, basically if Rocket Lab had dropped below $4, I was going to have to pay $4 for it, and that would have been 1,000 shares. So that would have been quite a lot of money. That would have been $4,000. Obviously, it didn't, so I didn't have to buy 1,000 shares at $4, and I just got paid $143 for giving that option to someone else. So that's just cash in the bank. And that's also one of the reasons I didn't originally buy back a month ago back here, is because I thought, well, I also have this option out, right? And if that gets triggered, plus I'm spending a bunch of money on shares, then I'm suddenly buying perhaps more than I intended originally. So that didn't happen. I ended up just making $143. Obviously, you know, small amounts, but I just do these kind of things for fun and try to improve my performance a little bit. I don't know. I enjoy making these short-term trades. I know it's probably technically not the best strategy for most investors, and I do still hold the stock long-term and will continue to do so. Yeah, Johnny, my average was 4.5, and I had 10,000 shares. I think it might have actually been 4.51. This was 400 more shares at 4.3. Might move the needle a little bit, bring my average down a couple cents, but I'm sure it won't move very much because it's not very many shares. Oh, thanks so much, Parth, for that super chat. I do appreciate it. Looks like it doesn't come through very well. Hey, Ghost Eye, my channel member, you are very much appreciated. One of two channel members. Any thoughts on long-term options? Twice as many shares as you intended. That's interesting. I was actually just looking at some options, and it's funny you should mention that. The next picture here was going to be a picture about options I was looking at. So this one is only a little shorter term, April 2024, maybe like 6 months or something like that, 188 days. I was considering doing a small trade just for fun because, I don't know, I guess I'm a gambler at heart and I enjoy some of these small trades. And usually with Rocket Lab, at least, they have worked out for me historically. I haven't really decided on that, but basically, remember that recent run-up we had. So again, this run-up right here. Hey, Kamal, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you joining me. Hope you have a beverage with me maybe if you're into that sort of thing. As I was saying, yeah, so this option, and you can see how like the volatility really goes much higher in the option versus the underlying. So the stock went up and the option went from $1 to $3.50, whereas the stock only went from like $4 to under $5 still. Were you really? That's interesting, Ghost Eye. I guess great minds think alike. I would also, strongly consider like a 2-year out option or like a leap. They could be really interesting as well. That's again more of like that's long term, right? So that's not like a short term fun trade. That's kind of something that I would consider a little bit more seriously. If I were to do this, I would probably just unload it at the first big move we get, which would hopefully happen within 6 months. They do seem to have big moves up and down, at least lately. We've been getting these big moves up and down, you know, pretty regularly. Even obviously zooming out, these don't look as big because of the fall of the SPAC, basically. But zooming in, these are big moves. So even going from, you know, 4 to 5 moves the option 3x. So if you do something like that, like last time I did this, I got a double, and I guess the itch has returned. So I might end up doing that. We'll have to see. Keep watching the stock, see if it goes lower, what's going to happen. Hey, Stein. I never pronounce that username right, but cheers to you as well. Can't actually see how many users are. Well, I mean, 6.9, you got a relatively good price on it, I think. If you buy back in, obviously, we will have done pretty well. The only thing I get scared of with that is, you know, what if it doesn't drop back down and then I just have no shares and then long term it keeps going up? I would find that very frustrating. So that's why I like to hold like a core amount and just do these short-term trades kind of on the side with smaller amounts. Time horizon for holding is like 5+ years. I hope it doesn't take that long to get like some good movement. I'm starting to think like 2024, 2025, maybe 2026, we should get really good movement when we start to see Neutron launching, when we start to get profitable. You look at Palantir, for example, they're not like fully profitable, but I think they're like adjusted EBITDA profitable or something like that just recently, and the stock went pretty wild. It happens a lot when basically when everyone realizes, no, the company is not going to go out of business, the stock seems to jump like at least 50%, I find, anyway. Stein. Okay, I'll just call you Stein from now on. So I also wanted to share some interesting pictures. And by the way, you guys can just keep mentioning, you know, whatever you want. This is really just a chill stream, but I just had a few things to share to kind of like fill the time or whatever, and a few interesting things to show you guys and kind of build the discussion around. So Harry Stranger, interesting post on Twitter, could be worth a follow. He posts a lot of satellite imagery pictures, especially of like launch sites and launch infrastructure and stuff like that. Someone on Twitter sent his profile to me, and I'm glad they did, because he did post some higher res pictures of Neutron pad development here. So we can see that the land has been cleared around here, kind of being, looks like it's getting ready for paving perhaps. If you zoom in further, that's Launch Complex 0A, that's Launch Complex 2, and this is kind of the construction area here. I was actually kind of expecting it to be a little further south, but maybe I kind of misunderstood originally where it was. This is a cool image as well. Let's see if we can watch it. Kind of see how it changes and changing the zoom as well. So there was some green, less green. There's green, less green. Yeah. Interesting stuff. This one again is a lower resolution, but you can still see the yellow slowly expanding there as they, I guess, do like the grading of the land and flattening everything out. So work is happening. I do hear that work doesn't happen the fastest in Virginia, supposedly. I know, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I just thought these were pretty cool pictures, and yeah, this Light the Beam account is the one who tagged me on it to let me know. So yeah, that's appreciated, by the way, if you happen to see this. And yeah, we had finding the water tank. Okay. Just, so I guess this here. Yeah. This is definitely much better quality image than the Planet Labs one I was looking at further. Very clear. I like it. I guess the Electron pad is it over here? I don't think it's that one. I thought it was south of the Electron pad. So anyone else make any investing trades this week? I'd be interested to hear for sure. What else was I gonna share? So this was an interesting mission where they're actually working with Firefly. You know, you think of them as just competitors a lot of the time. Yeah. We generally just think of them as competitors. And yeah, sorry guys, by the way, I do have probably like feels like a 20-30 second delay from when I see your chats compared to when you type it. So the back and forth has a little bit of a delay. It could be frustrating, I know. But yeah, that's just how it goes, I guess, with these live streams. Yeah, so they are working with Firefly Space on a lunar landing mission, Blue Ghost. And I guess this is the team here. It is supporting Firefly's transfer vehicle and lunar lander with flight software and guidance, navigation, control. So I guess that would be that acquisition. It was Max Flight Software. I'm trying to remember what the company was originally called. I think it started with an S. Anyway, yeah, I guess it's that flight. So Bitcoin, eh? How's Nvidia? Well, if you're on Nvidia, if you've been in it for any length of time, I'm sure you've done really well. That's one I've kind of been kicking myself. Never got in it. I don't know. It always seemed expensive. Well, that's not entirely true. I definitely should have gotten in it. But maybe now is not the time to buy. It's tough. How's Bitcoin doing though? It seems like crypto's kind of lost its luster lately. Like it's not as exciting. Not as many people are into it. I'm curious to see if it does kind of make a comeback. Obviously, it's still around, and nobody really uses it as a currency. So that's a little tough, but I guess as a store of value, potentially. Yeah, defense stocks, I guess Rocket Lab could be getting lumped in with them. Oop. Sorry, guys, 1 second. Sorry, guys. I hope you're still here. I had a knock at the door. Stacking for years. What's your average cost on the Bitcoin? I'd love to hear. Be interested. I bought a little bit of Ethereum back in the day, and to be honest, I never look at it anymore. But I feel like I'm probably still down on it, and I really should probably look at it occasionally, considering it was like $1,000, I think. Yeah, Planet Labs is interesting. I was listening today to interview Will Marshall, the CEO of Planet Labs, did on Manifest Space. And I thought it might be interesting to just share some of that audio. First, 15. I think that's pretty good, right? Like it at one point, I'm pretty sure Bitcoin was above 50,000. So 15K, like you should be doing pretty good. I'd be interested to see that article, by the way, Francisco, if you can link it. But for now, this will probably kill the possibility of posting ads on this video, but whatever. I thought I'd share this quick clip from Will Marshall, Planet Labs, and someone mentioned it. I was listening to it today, and I did find myself getting a little bit more bullish on the stock and their capabilities, but maybe this weekend I can sit down and do some spreadsheets and try to figure out, how much money I think they'll be making in a couple of years. Let's take a quick listen together. By the way, you can see some... Oh, really? You guys can't hear? I wonder why. God, there's always technical issues with these live streams. That's too bad. Anyway, if you want to check out this interview with Will Marshall, I thought it was pretty interesting. It started to make me feel a little bit better about the company, even though like it's obviously the stock isn't doing too well. I was thinking about it a bit lately. Again, I only have probably $2,000 worth. Well, when I bought, at least it was about $2,000 worth of stock. I'm sure it's a lot less now in Planet versus, you know, my Rocket Lab position much larger, so I don't follow it as closely, but I do want to do a deeper dive on it pretty soon. Yeah, so I think you guys couldn't hear the Spotify for some reason. That's too bad. Anyway, yeah, so if you are interested in Planet, I do recommend checking out that interview. I thought it was pretty interesting, and I think they're still kind of focusing in on profitability end of 2024, something that if they get to, you know, there should be some upside there. I was looking at the valuation of the stock, like, so yeah, it's hard to buy. Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way, Ghost Eye. Market cap of Planet Labs right now sitting at only 622 million apparently, and in the bank alone, well, it's probably a little bit less now because they, you know, they burn a bit every quarter like all these companies do. But last I checked, they had total cash 400 million. That's annual, so it's less. Yeah. 367 million just sitting in cash in the bank for them as of the end of the last quarter, and the total value of the company is 622 million. So the whole company minus the money sitting in the bank is only being valued at, I guess, less than 200 million, which seems pretty low to me. Again, assuming they do execute on this pipeline of opportunities, they keep talking about all these contracts in their pipeline they need to close the sales on, some worth $10+ million that are apparently just taking longer. But yeah, it's something I've been thinking about lately, like what do I want to do with my Planet shares? Should I be averaging down right now? But it's also, you know, you have to invest in what you know, and I don't know it well enough to say, I guess. But I would look to chat or any of you guys who are maybe more of an expert to share your thoughts with me on it. I was also going to briefly talk about Astra. I mean, look at that chart, right? So 0.72 cents per share. Anyway, the funny thing is they just regained deficiency because they, you know, the stock price was below $1. They only got back above that and, you know, cured their bid deficiency 15 days ago, and they did a 15-to-1 split to do that. So every 15 shares someone owned turned into 1 share. So you'd think with an extreme split like that, 15-to-1, like they should have been good for a little while, you would think. But, you know, 15 days later after that article comes out, they're already back below $1. And to me, this is the end. I don't see a way they survive on the public markets. The only thing I could think of is if some rich person out there or some fund buys it and takes it private, they have to get it off the stock market, because honestly, a stock price this low is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. No one will buy because they see the price is that low, and it's priced for bankruptcy. So the fact that it's priced for bankruptcy means they can't raise more money, and means no one wants to buy it. So really, someone just has to buy the whole thing, take it off the market private, get their house in order, and maybe they could bring it public again in like 5+ years. But I don't see a way this thing like survives on the public markets much longer. Like they're talking about yeah, I mean, and then that was the other discussion. Does Rocket Lab buy any more assets like they did for Virgin Orbit? I don't know. I don't think the facilities for Astra are anywhere near as close as they were between Rocket Lab and Virgin Orbit, so I don't think they'd want the facilities. Maybe some of the machines they could get for really cheap, but I don't think Astra has long left. I guess, some people out there say like they don't feel bad for anyone because, they should have done their own research, and I don't know. I guess I'm just a little too sympathetic to some people because I do feel bad. Like, look at this here. $300 per share down to 0.7. That's wild. And obviously this is split adjusted. Still absolutely wild. Yeah. Yeah, Kessler syndrome is something I made a video about once before. It's something I would be concerned about. Like, if anyone, to me, it's not right now a reason to avoid investing in space yet, but it's something to be worried about. Obviously, there's rules and regulations in place. If someone starts shooting down satellites in some kind of a war, like that to me would be the end. Like, the debris would go everywhere. We would be like, orbits would become unusable. Every time there's one of these tests where like a Russia or a China shoots a satellite down to test to make sure that they can, it's so frustrating because then you hear stories about tracking like 50,000 pieces of debris that could be the size of like your fingernail going through space faster than a bullet that could damage like any satellite in orbit. How do you track that? It's so difficult. Yeah, so hopefully nobody does any more of those crazy weapons tests and we can just get back to like using space properly. Obviously it is pretty big up there, and there's been a lot of talk lately about AI actually being able to help out with satellites communicating with each other and making sure they can adjust automatically to make sure they don't, hit each other. That could potentially really help as orbits get even more and more crowded. We're expecting, the amount of satellites to only continue to increase with so many new constellations coming online. Not just Kuiper and Starlink continuing on, but also like I think China's planning some sort of big constellation. There's a lot of other constellations out there too. So, I mean, I really hope the AI can help out with the making sure these satellites don't collide with each other. By the way, if anyone's watching who isn't subscribed, yeah, I've been a little slow lately this week, so I'd love to get a couple subs. It'd really help out. Thank you guys so much. Now I'm having trouble keeping up with the chat, which is probably a good thing, to be honest. But anyway, yeah, then just saw this article was pretty interesting about the Virgin Orbit facilities, Rocket Lab opening their engine facility, which was formerly Virgin Orbit's headquarters. Basically, some of the things Adam Spice said that I thought were interesting were things that we were thinking we could probably get done in 12 to 18 months. Well, it's done basically now, is me putting words in his mouth. So really, it was more of a timeline and uncertainty shrinker, if you will, and getting stuff 16 cents on the dollar didn't hurt. So they got a lot more space. And basically, what they're doing is they're moving all their engine production into this new building, and that frees up space in their existing building to expand their satellite manufacturing division, their space systems division. Yeah, I don't care, Ghost Eye, either. I didn't bother me too much as long as he's still CEO, still working hard, and still has some shares, so he has some skin in the game. And, he didn't sell even close to, the majority of his shares at all. I mean, he's been working on the company for 2 decades. Maybe he wants to, you know, have something to show for it other than the company itself. The other thing that was interesting that Adam Spice said, and this is about the failure of that recent launch that was pretty rough. Spice said the investigation is still in its early days and didn't offer a specific timetable for completing it or returning Electron to flight. I thought this was a little bit disappointing. I hoped they might be kind of better at this by now and would be able to return to flight faster than those previous ones. Sounds like that's not the case. He did say nothing right now would indicate anything different for return to flight compared to the 2 previous Electron failures. Those 2 previous failures were also upper stage, and that was what appeared to be the case this time around as well. So what was it? Was it 3 months that they were out of commission after the last failure? I did know at one point. Memory fails me. Someone in chat, I'm sure, can let me know how long it took them to get back flying after those previous failures. I think the notifications for new subs and all that stuff maybe doesn't work on this live stream. You think Planet Labs is an amazing discount? That's good to hear. I mean, again, yeah, I do have some shares, so I'm hoping to research it further next week and decide if I want to buy more at these levels. Again, I would have to sell some other company. So we just saw how I sold some Apple to buy some Rocket Lab. I'd have to find something else to sell if I was to buy more. Rocket Lab did announce the date of the 3rd quarter financial results. This is going to happen on November 8th. So looking forward to that, about a month away. Speculation, stocks. I would never ignore you, Ramu. Selling could be quicker, could be for quicker neutron development. Someone needs to compete with Falcon 9. It's getting ridiculous out there. Like, I know there's a lot of people trying to develop rockets, but I can't believe we're in the situation we are right now, where it's like, it feels like the entire world is just relying on Falcon 9. Imagine Falcon 9 had a failure. Like, the entire Western world's launch industry would just crawl to a stop. Anyway, yeah, someone needs to do something about that. Hopefully Neutron can. Intelsat. Very proud of Peter. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's definitely done a good job. He's definitely a very smart engineer. Take the opportunity and discuss. Yeah, I only recently learned about Matt, came across his stuff. I'd be open to talking with him about it for sure. I did get invited to go on Vince's Bullish's channel for a Rocket Lab weekly, and hopefully Matt would be there as well. I'll probably end up doing that. Sounds like I really need to check out his channel. I had no idea. So does he talk about Rocket Lab a lot? I thought he was really just kind of a Palantir guy. But yeah, I'm sure we'll end up doing that. Maybe we schedule the Rocket Lab weekly for after those Q3 results so we can really go over the numbers. But yeah, it's a little tough to sign up for a weekly podcast on someone else's channel because, you know, it doesn't really help your own channel so much. But I always enjoy talking with them for sure. Yeah, asteroid mining, I think, is like way in the future. When I was thinking about like future space applications recently as well, and asteroid mining, like, I think only makes sense once you already have some industry in space and you want to use those resources. Like, I don't think you want to send the resources from the asteroid back down to Earth and use them on Earth. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense to like launch something, go all the way to the asteroid, mine from it, send it back to Earth. But if, you know, you have some industry springing up in space, you're mining from an asteroid, you don't have to escape a massive gravity well like Earth does have. And it's being, you know, turned into something and used in space. That could potentially make a lot of sense. Potential other lines of business in space I was thinking about could be like, okay, so he does talk a lot about Rocket Lab. That's good to know. Yeah, so you have satellite servicing and refueling could be an interesting one. I don't think the economics yet make a ton of sense, but hopefully with launch costs coming down and like with super expensive satellites, servicing them could make a lot of sense. And government and defense organizations are actually very interested in that kind of technology because they also want to be able to, you know, dock with and grab other satellites. So if they potentially had a conflict, they could grab an enemy satellite and, you know, deorbit it, and that would actually be a nicer way than shooting it down because you wouldn't have a ton of debris either. Space tugs would kind of take a satellite to a proper orbit. So if something's maybe getting a rideshare mission and that's not where it needs to be, we could have a bunch of space tugs up there that could potentially take things to a higher orbit or deorbit things. There's a lot of talk about how to deorbit the ISS in, you know, 7 years or so. We'll see if that happens. And someone on the Discord, Count, let me know if you're around for this, keeps talking about space-based solar, which I find interesting. I don't know a ton about it, but apparently you can get like 10 times the amount of energy from solar panels in space versus on the ground because it's not going through the atmosphere, all that interference. And apparently you can just kind of beam that straight to the ground. I'm sure there'd be some losses, but maybe it's less. So that could potentially be a use down the line. Mobile space for... Yeah, I don't know. The recent video I did do on Rocket Lab where they were talking about, you know, broadband direct to mobile being an interesting area, and obviously their contract with Globalstar is for direct to mobile for those Apple phones. So yeah, it could be an area Rocket Lab is interested in for the future. I used to think maybe they didn't want to go into internet and broadband, but I'm starting to think down the line like that could be something they're quite interested in for sure. Hey Francisco, yeah, I did watch the Rocket Lab Weekly. I think I'm going to go on one in a few weeks and talk to those guys about Rocket Lab. Then this Intelsat, yeah, it is a little tough on these to have like an actual conversation because of the delay. Like it's obviously better than doing a recorded video, but it's still a little tough with like 30 seconds between me reading what you guys say and being able to respond. This contract, I think, is what Peter Beck would call a janky contract. He says, we don't sign fake janky contracts. So basically, Intelsat signed a multi-launch contract with Relativity Space. Some Rocket Lab fans were a little disappointed. They were hoping, you know, Neutron could get some launches from Intelsat. But I think what this is basically... Relativity offers them a steep discount to sign this contract now and says, you know, it's good for Relativity because they need to raise more money on the private markets, private equity markets. They can point to this backlog and say, look, we have these contracts, so that will help them raise money. And then when it comes to Intelsat, they're like, okay, if Relativity doesn't come through, there's no penalty for us. We'll get someone else to do it. On the off chance Relativity does come through, we get a steep discount, so it's like a win-win for them, really, is how I see it. But yeah, bit of a janky contract. Rocket, they're hoping for a first launch in 2026. It's so far away. It's farther behind even than Neutron, so we'll see what happens. So the company in April said they had a backlog of 1.65 billion. After signing this deal, they now say it's like 1.81. So for multiple launches, like it sounds like they're paying under 200 million for multiple launches of a rocket that is larger than a Falcon 9. So we'll see what happens with that. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We've seen it before, the Relativity deal with Impulse Space to go to Mars. Impulse Space CEO is an interesting guy, but there's no way that happens on the timeline they originally announced. Too much. I understand your thinking on that, Ira, because if Rocket Lab, let's just say theoretically, Rocket Lab never went into working on Neutron, they'd be very close to profitability right now, probably. It's hard to, figure out, because the Neutron spending, some falls under R&D, but a lot doesn't fall under R&D. So it's hard to figure out exactly how close to break even they would be without Neutron, but I think they're pretty much there, or at least they were before this recent failure. So definitely developing Neutron has pushed back profitability by a couple years. Hopefully once they do hit that profitability and they have Neutron, it will allow so much more, and the income will be much more massive than it would have been if they just continued on with the Electron line of business. But there could have been something to be said for becoming profitable first and then going heavy on Neutron. But the other side of that coin is there is so much demand for launch in that medium weight class coming online 2025, 2026. If they did push off that Neutron for a couple years until they got really solid with Electron, they'd be missing out on a lot of that demand. It would probably have to go to, whoever else can fill it, which at this point looks like almost no one. Maybe Relativity someday, maybe Firefly someday with that medium, Firefly Northrop, and a lot of SpaceX. But oh no, yeah, they can't try for an even larger. If they tried for another vessel before, say Neutron is like operating reliably and they're profitable, I think that would be crazy. I think most chatters would agree with me. Like, how would you guys feel if, most of you guys in the chat, if tomorrow they announced they're working on an even larger rocket? I mean, I don't think they would have the money for it. And they know that too. It is funny how things change though. Like back when Rocket Lab was still a private company, everyone was saying how things keep getting smaller with computers. We can have a computer chip, a little satellite the size of a phone or smaller. And now we're going back big again. Everything needs to be big these days, so it's kind of come full circle. Yeah, I would have to dump my shares too. And if Rocket Lab was only a rocket company, I I wouldn't be invested in them. What I love about Rocket Lab is not just the rockets part, but the space systems and all the rest. And that's also one of the reasons I'm not as big on, Firefly and Relativity, even though they are private, and also one of the reasons I was never big on Astra, as well as, obviously their rockets and all their other issues. What time is it? 6:30. And then in terms of SLS, I just found this article kind of interesting. I think we all know SLS is way too expensive. And this Inspector General basically said the same thing we all know and we're all thinking. I do hope SLS will get humans to the moon, because I would like to see that, before I turn 80. But apparently NASA has an aspirational goal to achieve a cost savings of 50% with the SLS, and that is highly unrealistic. independent reviews of the vehicle, which Congress mandated that NASA build more than a decade ago, have found that NASA is unlikely to have a sustainable deep space exploration program built around such an expensive heavy lift rocket. So anything built around SLS, pretty much unsustainable. I think we all kind of know that. Would you sell Rocket Lab stock to buy SpaceX if it went public? I mean, most likely not. Everything, like valuation always matters, of course. So it depends what Rocket Lab is valued at, what SpaceX is valued at, if Starlink is still a part of SpaceX, if Starlink has been spun out, you know, what's new with Rocket Lab. If it was today, unlikely. Yeah, but I would say never say never. Yeah. What about you, Johnny? Would you sell out and buy? Hey, Blake. Yeah, to me, that's just kind of Rocket Lab stock being Rocket Lab. I mean, it's kind of always like this, right? At least as far as I've owned it. I don't even think there's been any news. Yeah, just bouncy stock. But, you know, better than the vast majority of other space SPACs that have come public. Yeah, never buy the IPO is something I have learned the hard way. Probably never buy the SPAC until it's dropped. Never buy the IPO right away because they always seem to drop. Even going back to, I remember, like, this is going way back, but like when Facebook went public and they jumped up, like it's the same thing. It always seems to happen. Facebook had a big drop, bounced back obviously eventually, but for some reason these IPOs, they always seem to jump and then drop. I don't know, maybe Broadcom will be an exception. I guess we'll see on that. But a good point for sure, but yeah, I guess the long term was the question. Psyche is an interesting mission, by the way. Interplanetary mission to a unique asteroid between Mars and Jupiter, and the Solero line of business is providing the solar panels that look pretty cool. We saw a video here from NASA. Psyche is about to launch, so, and you know, it's cool that Rocket Lab is involved in these like deep space missions. Wild to think like how far away they go, and yeah, valuation matters, of course, and we would have to, it would be nice for them to go public just to get that insight into how much they make and all that kind of stuff, how much they spend on things. It's hard to know so much because there's so many of these companies are private. I'd love to see how much Blue Origin is spending. But again, yeah, we would never see that kind of thing until they went public. So if you guys had to buy Blue Origin, ULA, Relativity, or Firefly, what would you guys buy? Interested to hear on that one. I don't think I can say ULA, even though they're launching right now, just because the reusability situation on Vulcan doesn't look ideal. But I guess they would be safer in that they currently have revenue. Blue Origin just seems to be a cash burn machine. Maybe the new CEO can turn things around. Relativity seems very shaky. And their only launch, and I don't like only launch. But then Firefly is only launched too, but at least Firefly has launched something successfully. Maybe it would have to be Firefly. Yeah, so interested to hear which option you guys would choose between those competitors. I would have a really tough time. If I had to choose one, I would have a really tough time putting that money to work. Trick question, buy more Rocket Lab. I like it. I like it. Anything else you guys feel like talking about? Has Varda finally been given permission to re-enter their capsule? Last I heard, they hadn't. They still couldn't. I will be interested to see if space-based manufacturing can become a thing, because I would like to have, the use case for satellites expand beyond just internet and obviously observation. So you have Earth observation and like internet and communications. These pharmaceuticals could be an interesting one potentially. A sick game. See, this is the problem with these live streams. I come up with a question and then I have to wait so long for the answers that I end up move on and talk about something else, and then I get the answers. Yeah. Whoever has the Bezos money. So Ghost Eye would go with Blue Origin. For shame, Ghost Eye, for shame. Anyway, data centers in space has been... See you, Ira. Thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. I guess you must be in a different time zone than I am. Yeah, see, now I see the responses on the the Varda stuff. Do you know the runway they have? Yeah, I want to take a deeper look at this. So obviously we're getting close to the next quarterly results, but for Rocket Lab on their financials, let's take a quick look, guys. Although I've had half a beer, so my judgment may be... I'm just joking. Okay. So quarterly... Rocket Lab. Free cash flow. Looks like generally we're looking at like between 20 and 38 million per quarter. Let's check out the balance sheet. That's probably a better way of looking at it. So total cash on hand quarterly 479. So that was a big drop, right? That was like 73 million. And then that was like 50 million total cash on hand. But maybe there was a different reason for that. Total assets is dropping much more slowly. To me, I think we have a couple years. But I have been thinking that it's starting to get more likely they will raise additional capital. And that doesn't have to be the end of the world. Like, I've seen companies that did, have to dilute shareholders and raise capital, and still those shareholders did extremely well. Like it happened to me before. I was in a company, they had to raise additional capital, diluted the shareholders. I still got massive returns in the long run. Yeah, launch that like and subscribe button, as NZ says. They're all appreciated. I tried to set up notifications so we would get a little pop-up for fun if anyone subscribes. Apparently that didn't work, or maybe no one's just subscribed. I don't know. But yeah, unfortunate. Maybe I'll have to try and figure that out for the next live stream. Yeah, no updates on the second stage yet, unfortunately. Adam Spice said they're still relatively early on in their investigation and would think that it would take similar amounts of time to the last times they had those failures. Yeah, sucks for Varda, by the way, going back to them, that they can't get that re-entry permit. Like, you do everything properly in space and they won't let you come back to Earth. Like, oh, that's rough. And like, yeah, I guess another potential use case for space in the future people have talked about is data centers in space, because you can apparently you can get 10 times more power from the solar being in space versus in Earth, the sunlight having to go through the atmosphere, the clouds, all that. Obviously have nighttime. So from a power point of view, it could make sense. Plus you have to spend so much more money cooling on Earth. Maybe that could be a potential growth scenario for space down the line, having these data centers in space, taking up less space on Earth. So I own Tesla still. I did own Palantir for a while. You know what? This is the only time I would say it's okay to unsubscribe. You're welcome to give that a shot, Ramu. Yeah, I did own Palantir. I sold it just because... So I was a very different investor back a few years ago, and I would just kind of buy anything that sounded interesting without doing what I now consider to be like the proper amount of research on a company. So that's kind of what happened with Palantir. I just bought it because I heard people said it was cool and around AI. And I ended up selling it, did okay on it. I just wanted to focus my portfolio down to companies I know really well, as well as, some safer stuff, as well as some more speculative stuff. It does seem like Palantir is one of the other big stocks that the retail investors around the internet really like, though. I am very curious, Earth Creature, what the future is for, human space stations in low Earth orbit. We have heard rumors now that the Blue Origin Sierra Nevada future orbital reef space station may not be looking so hot anymore. There's the Axiom one that is supposedly going to be attached to the ISS at first while it's assembled, then disattach. It seems like commercial is the only way to go, like private companies owning these space stations in orbit, because NASA doesn't want to spend money on this forever. So much of their budget goes to the ISS, which, yes, we've learned a lot from. But if they do want to, focus on the moon and beyond low Earth orbit, having the ISS, suck up so much of the budget, it could be pretty difficult to make that happen. Still holding Palantir? Yeah, Blake, I'm not saying that Palantir is a bad investment because I don't own it. All I'm saying is I don't know. And I'm admitting I don't know. So I'm not holding it. But if I ever, really sit down and research it thoroughly, it may be something I should buy back in on. Sounds like they recently... Exactly. Sounds like they recently got close to the profitability mark on Palantir, so there shouldn't be many more concerns about, having to raise additional capital and that kind of thing, I think. But yeah, I don't know if Rocket Lab would need to do their own capsule at some point. Maybe they could launch the Dream Chaser to a space station. That could be an interesting use case. But if the orbital reef doesn't happen and the ISS gets deorbited in 2030, where are they sending their capsule to if they make one? And obviously... Starliner has just been a bit of a dumpster fire. I don't think that's going to get used for any future space stations. I guess Dragon's still an option. Enjoy the dinner, Ghost Eye. I don't know if that's exactly what I advised, but I would like to hear actually if you do pull the trigger on those options, because I'm very interested in them right now. What other stocks do I own apart from space stocks? So, yeah, I don't want to show the whole portfolio, but so basically a while back I bought what I considered big tech, which was the FANG. So I bought Apple, I bought Google, I bought Netflix, I bought Amazon. I'm no longer as hot on some of those. I recently sold some Apple. I still have some. I still have some Amazon. Still have some Google. I think I still have some Microsoft as well, because those ones just seem like you could buy and hold for a long time. This was 5-8 years ago. I still have some ETFs that pay dividends. I still have the safer side of my portfolio so that, if things go completely belly up in the stock market, which they kind of did in 2021, like I wasn't completely screwed because I wasn't all in on like these stocks that were plummeting to like, 30%, 10% of their original value. Stein, okay, the subscription notification did work, so yeah. I guess we haven't gotten any subscribers today, but do appreciate it. Thank you guys. Yeah, so I have the couch potato ETFs and dividend payers on the one side. That's how I started investing. I wasn't as confident, so I figured I would buy the ETFs that hold the whole market. It was safe. It tends to go up over the long run, and I wasn't as confident of being a good investor able to pick stocks. And I did liquidate some of those to go into individual companies, but I still hold some of them, and I like having that kind of safety net. And then I have some tech stocks, some Tesla. I did very well on Tesla. Actually, funny story. I guess, fell ass backward into like massive gains because years and years ago, Dawn Aerospace, I don't think the name sounds kind of familiar, but I don't know. Anyway, years and years ago, I thought, I want to invest in solar because I think renewables are going to grow. So I just randomly, and this was before I did, good research on companies, randomly bought Solar City because they were apparently the biggest in the business. And anyone who's followed that situation knows that Solar City ended up not doing very well. At this point, I don't think I care about Cathie Wood buying Rocket Lab, to be honest. Anyway, Solar City wasn't doing very well, and of course, Tesla basically bailed them out and acquired them. So then I ended up with these Tesla shares, and at the time I was like, I don't know anything about Tesla. Like, when was this? This was probably back in 2018, 2019. So that made me research Tesla and decide, am I going to hold these shares or am I going to sell? And I held, and then it dropped further, and I doubled down and added more. And like the rest is history. I got a 15x on those shares. So that turned into a large portion of my portfolio just by virtue of like 15xing within like a year or two. Like, it was crazy. I just admit, like, I got super lucky. Like, it wasn't even, I did research on Tesla. I was a smart guy. I bought it. I got a 15x. It was like, no. Elon bailed out his, his relative's solar business, and I ended up with Tesla shares, and I got a 15x. Like, yeah. Anyway. Pretty confident. Yeah, that's the thing about Peter, by the way. He won't tell us anything big until it's like ready to go. Like, it's not like we're going to work on this. We're working on this big thing. It'll be ready in 2 years. It's like, this is ready now is when he'll tell us. So I think you may be right on that. Well, unfortunately, we didn't get any new subscribers today, but it's still been fun hanging out with you guys. Probably going to pack it in pretty soon. I hope you've had a good time hanging out with me. If you have and you haven't subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that. Every subscriber helps so much. And yeah, this week has really slowed down in terms of the pace of growth for the channel. So really hoping to keep that up. Any last topics you guys want to discuss right before I sign out? I know I'm probably going to have to wait like 30 seconds here before I see what you say. So that's a little unfortunate, but I'll hang on for a minute here. I really wish I could see how many people were tuned in right now as well. That's kind of annoying, but maybe I can see. I'm still learning about these live streams, by the way. 137 views. Cool. Oh, live viewers were down to 32. I see. It's a little lower than I've had in the past, but that's all right. What? The Leafs do suck, Johnny. I admit it. It's very sad. Thanks for letting everyone know, though. Yeah, 33 people. Okay, well, it's not bad. I'm having a good Friday night hanging out with you guys. Do you know? Yeah, I heard about Rocket Lab Australia. They have a subsidiary, I believe. What do I want to see Rocket Lab do next? Basically, just execute on Neutron is the big thing. Obviously, I really want to see them figure out the reason for the failure on that last launch, get it fixed, get launching again. A big question mark is the number of launches they'll get off in the fourth quarter. Really hoping we could see 3 launches. I mean, it depends on the return to flight date, obviously. But they do have 3 launch pads. So I hope they can get off as many launches as possible to make the financials for the year look as good as possible. I really want to see the Archimedes engine test firing down at Stennis, because that's really, I think, the next big progress indicator we have to watch out for after we did get to see the second stage tanks tested and exploded. That was pretty fun. I would like to hear, maybe another big contract for the space system side of the business would be nice. I don't know if their capacity is all used up with like the Global Star deal and some of these other deals they've already made. But I would like to hear, space systems continue to expand. And I have heard that they're making good progress on improving the margins of that Solero line of business for the solar panels, which is obviously the weight kind of dragging down space systems. So that'll be very good in maybe a year or so, help, increase those margins, the gross margins on space systems. Yeah, let me know if there's anything specific you guys would like to see from Rocket Lab other than, what I just said. Obviously, progress on that launch pad for Neutron would also be very good. And we know they're going to keep spending, so I can't even say, get closer to profitability, right? Because we know they're going to keep spending on Neutron until, end of next year at least, so that's just what it is. You mean ABL? I think they've got a long way to go. I'm not too worried about them being, a major competitor. I do hope they succeed, but, any pure play only rocket company, I'd be worried. It's tough. It's a tough business to be only a rocket company. So, that's, as far as I'm aware, that's all they have. But I look forward to a successful launch from ABL. Definitely a lot of companies trying, so we'll see what happens. Obviously, they did have one pretty high profile failure already on that rocket. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me on your Friday night. I hope you enjoyed it. Anyone who hasn't subscribed, please do that. Hit like. I will see you very soon. Join the Discord if you haven't already and you want to talk more about space investing. See you next time.